This Mandalika circuit, what's your first impression maybe of the move?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, the layout's different. I think passing's going to be an enjoyable track to ride, and you know, a few issues with the surface and some down track blues, I guess, and improvements on stroke ago.
What's the best way to not need fast and difficult tracks like that? Far front, judging Toprak's pace, that seemed like a pretty big possibility. We're surprised by the gap. What's the best way to not need fast and difficult tracks like that? Far front, judging Toprak's pace, that seemed like a pretty big possibility. We're surprised by the gap this morning.
Always out the box, and to be honest, the advantage we had in FP1 was Toprak is so good at learning tracks and so good at riding in slippery conditions. Ridiculous. So yeah, we thought making it to be, let's say, a normal session. So
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Toprak is the man. He's been the man all the way through this season. We saw it in Most as well. Pretty much after only a couple of laps, he was down to lap record pace. And Toprak learns tracks quickly, mental capacity to be able to get themselves up to speed pretty quickly. And for most of these riders, when you talk to them and what they have to do, what's interesting is someone next to WSBK, and he said, I don't really do anything. I don't look at video. I don't look at track maps. Go for a walk, and then I go out.
4.230 now, and Andrea Locatelli, by following in his tyre tracks, has moved himself up into P2. So that working quite nicely for both of those Yamaha men.
Yeah, you can see Jonathan Ray now leaving the pits, and Ray was busy on his first stint. He did a dozen laps, and now he's going to have 15 minutes. Expect to see him close that gap down.
Alex Lowe's also out there completing an installation lap with 15 minutes remaining, and Razgat Lioglu continuing on for another lap just to see if he can raise that bar a little bit.
From what we were expecting around here was round about 165 km/h average speed, and Toprak for this.
It's a little bit outrageous, really, isn't it? When we get to tomorrow, we're going to be in that position that we have been in before after a Friday of saying, and that looks at the moment like being the only way to race him.
But Toprak's a rider with no weaknesses right now. He's really strong in pretty much every area. If you look at the question marks that we had about Toprak in previous years, it was qualifying. He was struggling. That was always a bit of an issue for him on the Kawasaki, and last year on the Yamaha. And suddenly we went to, I think it was Lozano, we went out in the wet session and he felt comfortable, and suddenly he felt he's been really, he led the race in Camden before technical problems, but he's looked really comfortable in all conditions now. Super pole sessions, he's been able to make a big step forward. He doesn't have a weakness anymore.
Toprak's latest laps, plural, they're going to go this lap also behind Davies. I wonder whether that gives some credence to what Paul was saying just a couple of moments ago. If a rider is fairly fast, it's not going to be necessarily easy to make a pass around the start-finish straight, only just over 500 metres. During the 2021 World SBK season, into turn one's going to be the most obvious passing place, I think.
Yeah, we sort of thought turn 10 might be an overtake, just how open it is through 7, 8 and 9. It's really fast through here. So then suddenly I think it's going to be pretty tricky to follow the rider at closing stages of the lap, and this is one of the areas of the track where the riders were saying grip was a little bit of a struggle through this area. There was a little bit of issues for some riders in towards the last couple of corners, down in towards turns 15 and 16. This is where Paul was really talking about it doesn't look like you're going to make moves. I still think you're going to see moves into there, but it's going to be moves where
Supercross style down the inside and stop the other person on the racing line. We could see a little bit of that through turn 16. Little doubt about that. Jonathan Ray line with 4.69, so that's less than a quarter of a second. Toprak Razgat Lioglu, which bodes well. This is his teammate Alex Lowe's personal best for him as well. We're all into the 1 minute 34. Was in this session.
Yeah, what's interesting for Ray is pretty much losing all that time in sector 1, matching Toprak, and so he'll know that he needs to make a bit of time between turn 1 and down in towards Lowe's in that sector as well. 0.3 seconds slower than Toprak.
Razgat Lioglu looks set now to improve and underline that pace by putting in another 3 completed sectors. If he puts in a couple here in the 1 minute 34 points, that proves the point, doesn't it?
Well, the points are harder than some of the other riders this morning, and he's been able to get good information from both sessions.
It was interesting, 1,000th of a second down. That's about as similar as you can get to his previous lap. I think that proves what I was saying. As far as we were talking about how slippery it was out there, and yet Toprak was able to get down into the 1 minute. Redding and Michael Ruben Rinaldi, who are 4th and 5th in this session when the track's rubbered into a much greater extent.
Yeah, I was asking Toprak about how he or 3 racing around go-kart tracks with Keenan and the Unju brothers as well. And he says by the end of the week you're trying to set the same time as you would on a new tyre. The bike moves around underneath you, how you have to adapt to it, how you have to make changes, and that's where we've seen in the low.
No, that's just for fun. certainly likes to entertain himself, and I think he went out early on in the campaign and free practice himself.
Yeah, well, Keaton, of course, was also out in action in Turkish 300 racing, where himself and Toprak went out. Toprak was out paid.
I think Toprak is faster than everyone at the moment. I don't think you've said this before. Few would argue if you said he's among the very top riders in the world at the moment.
Package work around him as well. Obviously, we've seen the Yamaha really strong with Locatelli and Gerloff through the course this year. Even have to look at Chris Ponce and his great performance, I think, back to Catalonia, finishing inside the top 9 in the Super Bowl.
He has been able to demonstrate that once again in free practice too. He leads the way on a 1 minute 34.230. Jonathan Ray just 0.2 of a second behind him. Andrea Locatelli best of the rest. Down to
both Marcos and Marco. We've seen the Ducatis be strong in the past in these sort of extreme heat. Like as slippery as it is live.
Also about the data, we try different gearing, final gear ratio, and we compare at the end. It seems that the so high temperature doesn't seem the biggest problem. Seems that the bike is
for 2. Jonathan Ray, a quarter of a second down on his latest lap coming into the final sector, loses further ground in sector 4. That's been a trend compared to Razgat Lioglu throughout the day. That final sector that pretty much everyone losing to.
For Jonathan Ray, spent a bit of time in sector 1. He's only a 10th of a second slower than Toprak now, so he's closing in on what he needs to do. No points, no prizes.
Leon Haslam's just popped up into P4, so that catches a bit by surprise. Haslam was further down the order than that. 34.6 from
Okay, now when you look at the Yamahas, the Kawasaki's and the Ducatis, all very consistent all the way through. It does make it very difficult if you're not quite able to get to that limit of your bike to then get yourself into those leading positions. We've obviously seen Bautista with podium, Haslam has podium as well this year, and it has been a case of, for both of them, they've had to try and make those steps.
Anonymous spell for Garrett Gerloff. You'll think all the way back to Assen, the first 4 rounds of the season. Gerloff was absolutely superb, and you would have never in a million years believed that Axel Bassani was going to sit in 8th position in the championship, only 14 clear of the sun.
Yeah, and certainly for Gerloff, up until Assen, really looked like he was consistently at the front, able to run at the same pace and really battle with everyone in those leading positions. Had some podiums at the start of the year. Hopefully this is the sign of what we're going to see from him again next year. We want to see him up at the front of the field. He's an exciting rider. He's obviously had some tough times through the course of this season, but you want to see him able to show exactly what he can do on a superbike.
Right, as far as next season is concerned, as he's set to move on from WSBK. 3 minutes still on the clock for FP2. Razgat Lioglu, the fastest man, to the final laps from all of our big guns. Michael van der Mark just setting a new personal best at 1 minute 34.938.
Yeah, so we've got the leading 11 riders now in the 1 minute 34s as well. So now with Scott Redding all the way down in 11th, but only 8/10 of Toprak on course for another consistent lap there, 34.3. That's about a 10th of a second off of his fastest time, but still faster than what we've seen from anyone else.
That's when Razgat Lioglu can set a time that isn't an improvement, but is still faster than anyone else. Leon Haslam put in a really strong lap. He's now made his way back into the pits, so that may well be the end of his session, at least competitively. Alvaro Bautista here, see if he can match his teammate the absolute session.
Yeah, and for the top 12, it's only 8/10 of a second separating them. It's going to get a little bit closer now as well. Scott Redding just coming into the last couple of corners. We catch up with the number 45. He's half a second off the pace, but couldn't move himself up a couple of positions here.
He only needs to get into the 3rd sector, and he's up at the halfway mark on Razgat Lioglu.
Yeah, Gerloff up by 0.04 of a second, so good run through the first half of the lap, just about to come through to the end of sector 3 as well. We'll keep us
a couple of tenths of a second through that 3rd sector. He is in line still for a new personal best to try and move himself up from 8th position. Scott Redding with a strong 1st sector on his latest lap. We're only 1.5 minutes away now from the checkered flag falling, so we're in towards final lap territory. A bit of a single lap cracker late on in FP1. He's got to kind of justify that pace over a longer distance over the course of tomorrow.
Yeah, well, he's been able to put in 3 pretty fast laps in a row there, 34.4 and then a 34.
Be able to get this lap completed and have time for one more in the remainder of free practice 2. It is Redding, who is at the moment the only rider needs work for him to do over the course of this weekend. Redding crosses the line to go P5, splits Bautista and Haslam in the pecking order. 134.5 5.79. Scott Redding's top.
Yeah, Redding actually fastest of all in Sector 3 as well now, so he's been able to find some progress over the course of the last couple of sessions as well.
Alvaro Bautista won't improve on his final lap. He's lost over a second through Sector 2 after being 7 thousandths of a second up. Slower than his previous lap, but he's not going to mind too much about that. Razgatlioglu's got this session, he's got Friday sewn up here at the Mandalika.
Yeah, and what's going to be interesting is to see that for Toprak, he's fast in each of the sectors, very fast in Sector 2, but for Jonathan Ray, he's been able to his lap time in the second half of the lap.
Chaz Davies gets caught up behind Oliver Koenig, and I'd say that's going to go away from him now. He makes his way through on the inside line, and that's where we're talking about the Dean. It's certainly one of the slowest, if not the slowest corner on the circuit, and Chaz Davies using that to good effect to get through on Oliver Koenig, and it is a new personal best, but I fancy that Davies probably would have
Kawasaki as well,
and purely in numbers terms, probably not too far off what other riders who have been doing on that same bike this season, to be honest.
Yeah, we've seen the likes of Epis and Crescent. He actually found 4.5 seconds in this session. For Oliver, he's also trying to learn how to ride a World SBK bike. This is his first outing on a World SBK spec bike. He has ridden a superbike in the Endurance World Championship.
Yes, but even then, for only a fairly limited spell, having jumped this weekend, and do send best of luck to him to try and mix it with these big guns is so just to underline how close they are. A bit of a gap behind the top 12 positions. Isaac Vinales, 12th fastest, less than 3/4 tenths covering the top 12, and then 1.7 covering the entire 19, with Oliver Koenig the outsider, as it were, in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning that Isaac Vinales is up there inside the top 12 only.
For me, I can tell you that the air temperature, the humidity here in Indonesia really is quite stunning. It's open the commentary box door is like opening your oven door back home. Razgatlioglu just making his way back into his pit box, having finished P1 once again.